Today's interview is such a treat. I am chatting with Bradley Montag, who I have worked with since pretty much the inception of his interior design firm. And he's an ex-town planning lawyer. He's just so interesting. We always have really interesting chats when we're private coaching. And he and I decided to make one of those chats public for you to listen in on. Throughout the course of this conversation, we talk about things like town planning, things like flipping real estate, looking at purchasing the best house in the worst street, looking at trends, what people do to honor the heritage of their homes. He has a series on TikTok and Instagram that goes through every Friday and looks at a floor plan and what could be possible and what he would do through the eyes of an interior designer. And I'm obsessed with it. It's not a secret. I wait for Fridays. I can't wait to see if I agree or disagree. I have hot takes all the time. And I learn a lot as well because I think there are a lot of things that he employs to his ideas that I'm like, oh, wow, I wouldn't have thought to do that. So showcasing that creativity. But overarchingly, I think you're just going to love listening, whether you agree with us or not, at some opinions that we have along the way. And we just talk a lot about different specific suburbs and areas and things people are doing to homes and what's happening out there. Stick around. I feel like it unfolds, this conversation. It gets better and better. Like most things, even when I'm coaching, I always say, don't book 60 minutes, book 90, because all the best stuff happens in that last 30 minutes after we've established some cadence and repertoire and we're starting to really get into the juicy part of coaching. If you're watching on YouTube, hello, I'd love a comment. I would love for you to subscribe to the channel so you get the podcast early. It comes out 2 days earlier on YouTube than it does for audio listeners on Spotify and Apple. So if there is an interview or there is a topic that you are really dying to get your hands on early, YouTube is the way to do it. Okay, enjoy. Brother, you started in law and town planning. When you were doing that, like in the day-to-day of that type of role, did you always see yourself moving into something creative?
I don't think I saw it immediately. I stumbled into law. To take it back, maybe even 10 years before I started that, I originally started studying architecture at university, and I did that for 2.5 years. And I was just very lost in that late teens, early 20s part of my life, and kind of just took this very snake-like circuitous route through uni because I was like, oh, well, I can just change things. And I discovered you can just transfer courses as many times as you want. And the HEX debt just keeps accruing, but you don't ever really see it until you start working. So I did psychology after that for a bit, and then I ended up doing law. And when I was working in it, it was pretty soon. I remember on the day that I was admitted as a lawyer, so it's like when you do a formal ceremony at the Supreme Court, I went straight afterwards to meet with a mortgage broker because I wanted to find out whether I could do property development. Like I wanted to work out if I could buy something and flip it. And I thought it was ironic that on the day that I officially became a lawyer, that was like the first thing I had on my mind.
Yeah, for sure. It's almost a little hint, isn't it?
It was like a little hint. It's like, oh, okay, well, this is, there's something going on at a deeper level here. But I just sort of kept going with it. It was fun being a lawyer at the early stages, working in like a big firm and in the grad program. It's like, what's that HBO series? There's an HBO series that's like all about the kids at the big banking firm, and you have a lot of fun, and there's like a grad group, and that kind of like consumes your mind a bit. And then the reality starts to hit of like, oh, this is an everyday grind. And eventually I was like, I cannot do this anymore. I liked town planning law because it was super relevant to what I really liked. And I would get excited when the architects would send through the plans. I'd be like looking at them and being like, okay, this is what I would change. And this is how I'd make it look. I would do
More
a lot of,
clues.
yeah, more clues. And then by the end, I was like, this is torturing me and I need to do something creative. But I actually didn't know what it was at that time.
Is there anything that you assumed would be easier about the transition that actually wasn't?
It's a really good question. The transition was definitely challenging because I didn't have a clear picture of what I wanted to do. I knew it was something creative. At one stage, I wanted to like make a chocolate sauce and sell and sell that. I was grasping at so many different things. I think what was the easier thing was letting go of some of the things I'd become accustomed to working in a corporate career. And you might resonate with some of this as well from your background, but like, there are a lot of perks when you work in corporate, a lot of kind of comforts that you get, plus you get a certain kind of level of salary, which allows you to enjoy certain things in life. I think giving up some of that and the ego that goes with it was probably a bit easier than expected. I
I
just
still
felt
wait every Christmas for the bottles of Verve from the
yeah.
suppliers to come rolling in, and it's like, oh, it's not quite the same as, like, managing a huge insurance portfolio, and they would send all these gifts and things, and now you're kinda going, "Well, okay, I guess I'll just buy my own."
Yeah, exactly. You've got to buy your own, and that's okay because actually what you do is so much more fulfilling.
Yeah.
But it's easier to give up on a lot of those things, and it's easier to adjust your lifestyle when you know that there's something greater that's kind of like calling you. And there's this sense of like something's like pulling you, and you need to just move toward it. And it's okay to say, actually, I don't know what I want to do. I'm just trying to figure things out one day at a time. And I thought I would never be able to just be in that limbo land. And I'd say that was the unexpected easy thing.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because it is an exercise in trust. It's going out, and we find that as creatives anyway, because we very rarely have financial stability. We sometimes don't know more than 3 months ahead what next project is coming, and so you can be like me, 8 years into running your business, and still being like, "It'll work out. Like something's coming. As long as I keep doing what I'm doing and showing up, should be fine." When you walk into a property today, what are you assessing with that background in law and town planning? What do you think you're assessing that other designers might overlook?
Mm. I think town planning is like a huge part of the design process, like understanding that you cannot do anything you want with a property is a very important frame of mind because you'd never want to set up unrealistic expectations with a client and say, oh, yeah, you can like do all these things and it's going to be enormous and amazing. And don't worry about your neighbor there and you're going to block all their northern light. Like that doesn't matter. Of course it matters. Like you have to be able to understand, I think, at least the basics of planning, even as an interior designer, because a lot of what you're doing will involve where a home is extended. And if you're the first port of call for a client, and then it leads into referring to an architect or a draftsperson or whatever other professional, you need to be able to have a good sense and establish that part of the relationship. There's, I guess, the creative part of the relationship where you are showing your design expertise of what can be achieved in a home and how you can recreate the way it feels. But then there's also the very practical side of, it takes time to develop a design scheme to the point where it can go to planning. And then what happens during planning? How long does that take? And then what happens after? Because it's all essential. Like if you get a client and like, oh, here's the house we have and we're doing this huge extension and we want it all complete in 6 months, like it's just not, it can't happen because if you need to go after planning, that could take 6 months alone. So I think it's about having a couple of different sides of the brain switched on.
Yeah, you sound like the exact perfect blend of me and my husband. I'll pin everything and draw things up and dream things up, and he will come in with all the practical reasons why it can't just be achieved by clicking your fingers and why it might not work in the space, or we might need to reconsider or timeline it out a little bit longer, then you won't have it next weekend. Like I think that's a really nice blend, isn't it? Being able to look at it from a practical and a creative sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think the best outcomes arrive where there is that harmony between the practical and the creative. It's not that the practical trumps the creative, but the practical informs the creative. So I guess from my background, I let the practical help the design outcome because I already have an idea in my head of what can be achieved. And then that informs the designer. Sometimes the best designs actually come out of a really tricky situation. where you've got a really tight footprint, or you can't extend too much, or you've got a tricky aspect, or where the lighting, getting natural light in is challenging. Those things actually make design really interesting because you have to work a bit harder. If you just have a big expansive box, there's not the same level of excitement that comes through the detail, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Some of the happiest accidents are the accidents on site where you uncover something or you're not expecting something or something wasn't in the plans and the walls get ripped out and there's something. And having to think on your feet a little bit and being creative in that moment or come up with the solution. I think a lot of designers, especially new designers, are worried about problems on projects and mistakes and hiccups and things. I will hand on heart say I think that you can't have a project without a hiccup or a mistake, something come up. And it's how you deal with that and how you advocate for your client, your homeowner, how you are creatively able to mitigate risk and come up with solutions. That's actually why you were hired. I think you're crazy
Mm.
if you think that you're going to have these huge, beautiful projects. And I mean, you have a heritage focus as well. So something's going to come up, right? You've just got to be realistic about that's in your future for every project.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true, especially, of course, with heritage. But in any project, hiccups happen, things come up that you cannot foresee. It's just the nature in general of life. Even, when I think about my journey from law to design, there were hiccups and things I didn't expect, and they end up leading you to different clues which help to complete the picture. It's the same on a design project, and it's the same from my experience in running a legal matter. You have an idea of where the outcome will be, but then there are things that pop up along the way that you just have to be able to troubleshoot on the spot and hold your cool and still know that the outcome's going to be good, but that it might just be a bit different and you have to be able to like shift a little bit. And I think when it comes to heritage, if you've got a house that's 100 years old, even if it's 50 years old, there'll be all kinds of things that you will find tricky to discover. Like, I mean, if you have like a mid-century home and it's got a it's built on a concrete slab and there's plumbing going through there, it's kind of hard to know at the outset where everything's going to be. And if you move this wall, like what will happen? Things might happen as long as the house doesn't fall down and you've got some solid
Knock down,
engineering
rebuild
advice.
anyone? Like,
Well, we thought we were going to renovate mid-century and actually knock down rebuild for you.
there you go. But that's interesting because with heritage specifically and renovations as well, you can't really plan, as you say, for things you're going to discover, things that the house has its story, the house has history. It has something to show you that you maybe can't see on the outside. I had a client last week stop me in the middle of town and I finished the job for her and the trades are all on site and we're doing the facade and she's like, watch this. And they pulled the facade of her bedroom wall off and she had an infestation of micro bats. Now, I certainly didn't know they were there, and I was not planning for that. There was nothing in the scope of work as, like, bat exterminator, like, I had nothing no way of knowing that, and I think that's the beauty like, that's the excitement sometimes. It depends, if that's what draws you to it, but it's almost like those hidden challenges keep you on your toes. It's why I love going into Zoom calls and not knowing much about the house. And it's a bit like, thank God you're here. I dial in. I'm like, so what are we doing? Where are we? What's the scenario? Like, what can we do? And I think most creatives, especially those in the design industry, enjoy that kind of baptism of fire and being on
Yeah.
all the time.
When it comes to like a heritage property, like you've got to really love that subject. Like you have to love the house that you have, whatever era it's from. And I think people like them because it reflects like some part of them. Like they see some part of them or the potential of it somehow aligns with them. And the excitement, I think that those kind of clients come from, there's a slight element of the unknown. Like for example, when we remove this wall, will there be a micro bat infestation? Or, but maybe more interestingly, like, will we discover some artifact or some really unique detail that is from the original wallpaper or something? And how can that then inform the design? So you get these surprises and they tell a story from that house and it can be really exciting if you want to embrace it. Where it doesn't work is if that client really just wants a modern kind of box house and they're trying to like superimpose that onto a heritage house, and there's friction and it won't end well.
Do you think sometimes people are buying the wrong homes because they don't understand potential?
Yeah, definitely. I think we get when it comes to like home ownership and buying and selling, which is something that I've experienced for myself, is you can get caught in the narrative, especially in Australia, that, oh my, like housing is so expensive. If you don't get this one, you'll never find anything else, and panic. And I'm not saying that housing is inexpensive. It is expensive here. But I have always found that if you just wait, the right place will come up for you. So I think some people do panic buy and they're like, okay, I can afford this house and we'll make it work. And then they end up buying something they don't really want. Or maybe they love the idea of having a character home, but really what they want is actually just a modern house that has the rooms in the specific places. So yeah, I think people can sometimes end up buying into the wrong kind of place. And it makes the transformation journey quite hard. And you're never going to really resonate with your home. And I think that's the whole purpose of interior design is that you end up having someone design a home for you that resonates really strongly.
I think there's so many houses, just my experience, conversations that I've had is I think in Australia specifically, people buying homes buy to the top of their budget as opposed to buying and thinking about how they could like set some money aside to actually do the work that the home needs to be what they want it to be. So they sort of look at, okay, we can borrow this or we can have this. And I feel like they just stretch all the way to that top bit for the most amount of rooms, the most amount of garages,
Mm,
car spaces, like status. Whereas if you were to pull that back and go into something more modest, but have 100K from the get go to spend on making it exactly like I think that's how designers feel. But then I don't know, would you agree? I feel like people just spend to the very top
mm.
amount.
Absolutely. And I have, from my own experience, I have done exactly that thing of buying to the top of my limit and then realizing I had nothing left over to make it my own. So I had a place that had these rooms that like I didn't like it. And at least with a property, you can kind of get out of it. You can sell it if it's just not right at the end of the day. But it's so true. And I think it's a bit of like an epidemic here. Go to your maximum, get as much space. It's like, well, what for? I understand if you're a 4-person family, you need at least 3 bedrooms, but some people are 4-people families and they go for 5 or 6 bedroom and they've spent at the top of their range and there's nothing left to personalize it. And where's the fun in that? I mean, maybe that's just me as a designer. I'm like, I want to think about how can I make this my own? How can I make it really fun? And I think for whatever is my next buy, it will 100% be from that place of what can I afford that really aligns with me and that I have some budget to like do something really cool with. Actually, I did one of my reels recently was this like really cute apartment in South Yarra. And I don't know if you're familiar with that top end of South Yarra near the Yarra where all those Art Deco buildings
Yeah.
are. And it's like, so beautiful there. And I saw one in the Spanish Mission building. I'm like, I've got to do a video on it because I would buy this. And there's just so much fun you can have. And I was just thinking of like all the Parisian apartments, how beautifully they're done. They're like so romantic and cool. And you can have all these incredible materials and paint this amazing canvas. And yeah, I would say get in with what you can afford and save some to really make it your own. I think that's really important for living well, to be
Mm.
honest.
You used the word epidemic before, and I was just about to write it on my notes here to bring up because I think if there's an epidemic, it's also in real estate agents designing how we live in our homes in terms of constantly reinforcing positives around resale and positives around disconnecting what humanizes a home and what make like all the things that we naturally adore being designers is all the things that they're basically like, nope, strip that out, don't have that, don't have that, don't take that risk, don't. And I feel like they maybe have more influence or vocalization in the buying and selling period of a person. So that's maybe all that the potential homeowner knows about design is what they were taught, and designing to or staging to sell is different to staging to live and designing to live. And I don't know, do you come across that same thing? I feel like we're on top of it because we're going up against that constant narrative that you need to not put a footprint inside your own home.
I am so incredibly passionate about this. Yes, there is an enormous amount of influence through the real estate agents. And how can I put this best? So much. And I see it actually particularly in Sydney, but I know it happens everywhere. Every home starts looking the same and it's so incredibly boring. I understand if you're a property developer and you're building 10 apartment block and you're trying to sell it, you've got to keep your market broad if you're building from the back. However, if you're buying a home and you want to renovate it, do not renovate for the potential of an unknown buyer. To me, it makes no sense. And also, it sucks away the life force behind you and your home, because why would you want to live that way? It's your home, it's your space to live. It needs to show who you are and it needs to feel inherently you and needs to feel alive. And I think what I find with these very staged for sale homes, I don't just mean staging furniture wise, but people who renovate to sell, is they have no life. Like there's no soul. It just feels lifeless and flat. And even worse is when I see a place that's for sale and they've done it up cheap. Like I can tell it's cheap. I'm sure you'd be able to tell it's cheap. They've just tried to make it look palatable, but I think I would rather have the original bathroom, because now I've got to pay for your renovation because that will be their expectation. But I don't even want that renovation because it looks shit, and I would want to make it look my own way, but I don't want to pay for that renovation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, homeowners should really think about that, I think, from the lens of, you don't have a brief, you don't know what you're actually renovating for the next person, so you're not impressing anyone. You might as well have lived how you wanted to live, because let's just assume, because it's very likely that by the time you sell this in 10 years, the new owners are gonna wanna rip out the bathroom and kitchen anyway, like in a 10, 20-year
Mm,
cycle. I know obviously Europe and other countries will renovate their kitchens much more frequently. We have larger homes and, we tend to make them last 20 to 30 years minimum. But I think that with the renovating of the bathroom specifically and other things, where you try to keep it for the next person, yeah, it just loses so much. And you've actually lived with a crappy bathroom too, because you didn't want that. You just thought the real estate agent might be impressed by your white subway tiles and you cleaned the grout of those. And you actually had no emotional connection to that tile selection
yeah.
whatsoever. You just went in and you were like, what is this per square meter? Does this match with that? Put that up the walls, that on the floor. Like that is exactly the design process of someone who thinks we're redoing the bathroom, but if you're redoing the bathroom with resale in mind, it's just, I don't know, it's miserable, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's miserable, and I think it's a real trap.
Mm.
I think it's a real trap to renovate with resale in mind, because you're still spending a lot of money
But
and
not enjoying it.
but you're not enjoying it. I can understand if you're like, we're ready to sell and we just want to fix it up for sale. I still think there's no point personally, but I can understand that more. But if you're renovating with the view to staying there 5, 10, 15 years,
Yeah.
then it really makes no sense because,
And that's the most common that it actually is. It's
yeah,
like we're gonna renovate now, we're gonna sell in 5 to 10. So because we're doing the reno now, we'll do it in a way that will market well in real estate photography. But you're talking about
yes.
a 5, 10-year-old white tile that's a bit manky. I don't know,
Yeah,
it's just not good.
absolutely. And by the time you get to sale, that look may be not
It
the
will
look,
be.
because you're trying to follow a trend, right? When you renovate for resale, you're trying to think this is the trend, so I better give everyone what they want. But it's the trend now, and it won't be in 5 or 10 because that's the nature of trend. If you actually go with what the house is calling out for and something unique, it'll always belong well in that house. And I think will actually deliver a superior return over time. And I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe that there is data that comes out every now and then. I see it in the real estate pages about how architecturally designed homes actually have a resale premium. And architecturally designed homes, or I would extend it to well-designed homes by interior designers as well, when they're kind of really unique, you think, wow, I have to have that home because there's something about it. It's been so well designed and curated for exactly what it is that you're not going to get it again. But when you renovate for resale, it's like, oh, well, if I don't get this one, I'll get the next one because they're all the same.
Yeah, I fully support that. And I think it's such an interesting juxtaposition to what the agents are saying, which is strip out personality, don't use color, put everything away, let them do their job. We're not here to get all over on the agents. But I do think that message, that story message of a home gets lost over time, or it's been diluted to a way that homeowners, and I love that perspective of having a qualified team come in. It's absolutely putting your home in a premium, and you can tell when good work has been done. So a good
Mhm.
renovation, no matter how maybe polarizing the design might be, if it suits the house and it's telling the story of the house and it's matching the errors of the house, it will always probably perform better online and in sale and in auction than something that's just the same as everyone else.
Yeah, I completely agree with it. With that statement, I think there's financial reward. And I think there's also just a lot of emotional reward in it as well to build something that is superior. And to me, it just makes sense. I can't stand when I see people renovating like an old home. Like there's one around the corner from me, and they've just rendered over the entire original beautiful brick facade, and they've rendered over all the detailing. I said, why? And I can see
Painted
inside
all
that's
white.
it's all white. Inside, I mean, they've got, really bright white lights, and inside they've ripped out all the ceiling roses. And why
It
would
just
you
makes your
do
heart bleed.
that?
You're like, just go buy it, buy or build. Go buy an existing box, build a new box, whatever that looks like, but don't get your hands on these heritage homes and strip them and get a spray gun. You see all the YouTube clips of people like,
Yeah.
we bought this, we bought a school and we're turning it into this. Like that's my whole algorithm. I just watch hours of that. But I watch it with that same like white knuckled, like, don't pay that.
It's
Yeah.
like that house is rage baiting me every
Yeah.
morning when I walk past it with my dog. It's like just staring at me, and I've just seen the kitchen go in, and I'm just like, oh, why? They've made it that, rounded Santorini style kitchen. I'm like, what has this got to do with a Federation brick home?
And that's really interesting the way that you bring that up because I talk about this a lot. I go to an in-home concert out here in the Macedon Ranges where I live, which is beautiful, bushland, wineries. It's just such a gorgeous spot. And every second person is like, we want Hamptons. Like, but why? Like, we're not near the beach. The actual Hamptons is how many kilometers away? Like, do the math. I don't really understand. And, it's just born of an influence, perhaps when we see certain HGTV channels and designers
Mm,
go nuts for a while. And I think the sensibility of actually stopping and going, what does this house need? And what does this house say? And also, I see a lot a timeline problem where people move in, they want to make their changes before they've lived through all 4 seasons of a year. So
mm,
that's my recommendation, but it's obviously not always possible. But it's like if you start to see how winter sunlight falls on your walls versus the summer feeling versus if you do one whole secular year, 12 months, you will know exactly what you want to do with this home. And I think that what happens is we want to see the full transformation within the first 12 weeks of living there. And that's where you can go wrong because that's where you start painting things white that you think you can't live
yeah.
with and you've lost all of the heart and soul. And then you've kind of sat back and gone, we probably could have lived with that and blended it in this way. And I think people have regrets when they do that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I feel like it's really important to understand the impact of the environment on the home. You
Mm.
need to see it because it should inform how you design that house.
Yeah, there's a lot of rush jobs out there. What do you think
Mm.
makes a property worth keeping in your eyes? So if you're assessing things, and I know you do lots of assessing, lots of realestate.com, checking out what's out there, what do you consider to be worth keeping?
In terms of a whole home or
Mm.
individual element?
Oh, however you want to answer that, I'm up for
Okay.
it.
I think like if you've bought a house and it's like 100-year old, timber build and the entire thing has a termite infestation and it's dilapidated and falling down, I think sadly it probably can't be kept. Like all things in material form will come to a point where they deteriorate and they just need to return to earth.
Mm.
And it's probably a fresh start. Otherwise, I think pretty much anything can be considered for retention. Like, why not? I've been thinking a lot recently about, and you see them a lot in Melbourne, in the kind of 10 to 20 kilometer ring from the cities, the like triple fronted. I think they're sort of built in the 40s, 50s, it's post-war period. And they're not particularly like glamorous homes, but they have stood for a long time now. And I think for so long, I've seen in suburbs like McKinnon and Bentley, and then there's also some on like the western side of Melbourne, where they just demolish them and they put a white box, or what's even more popular, two white boxes side by side on these blocks. Now, I'm pro housing density, but I also think that these homes do tell a story. They tell a story, for example, of post-war rationalism and
Mm.
having to pare back and a bit of austerity, but they still have like nice details and they can be kept
And
and
they
they
have
can
great
be
floor plans, very
reimagined.
practical for families, and like
Yes.
on how they use the space on the block of land means that, you're getting this bonus residential feeling with kids or whatever of a backyard and a bit of a front
Yes.
yard. And you're getting things that you don't get when you smash two boxes up
Yeah.
against each other with no even acoustical friction. You can hear the
Yeah.
neighbors sneeze and say, Bless you," that doesn't exist. That having that little bit of space in the
Mm.
city it is almost a flex. It's a luxury. There's a lot of
Mm.
people right now who can't even have a dog or have,
Yeah.
the kids have to go to the park. And I think there's a lot to be said for that era of home. And it's not the like sexiest, but it can be.
I think we can make them very sexy. And I've seen some really good examples of it being done. All of them really just like they fully lean into the era. They borrow the color palette from that time. And it works really well. And as you say, they tend to have really good layouts. So often you don't have to do heaps of structural work to them because certain homes like Art Deco, Spanish Mission tend to have like terrible layouts that just do not work in modern life. I understand why you'd want to buy one. They're incredible and beautiful. But for like a family, they are perfect. You don't need to make them too big. You often don't even need to go upstairs. You can just create a really nice, solid family home.
I'm definitely thinking of Victorian terraces and things that I lived in my 20s. And, the
Yeah.
sounds of the two long, dark hallways are parallel to the neighbors. So if you had kids running up and down that hallway, you'd be waking up your young neighbors. Like it is very different way of living as well. And again, those are very dark and they're very, one big long corridor
Mm.
of floor plan. And so, yeah, those that you're explaining, and I saw a good example of one just last night, actually. I was watching Grand Design's Transformation on
Nice.
ABC, and they had the shag house, which I think it's called shag pile house. I better work that out before I edit. I don't want to call it the shag house, but that's not what it's called, but I'll find out. And they
It's
have
funny. I
lived
went straight to shag as in shag pile in my
that's
mind.
exactly what it is.
I
Like
didn't
it's
even think,
nuts.
and then,
Okay.
yeah, I
Yeah.
understand where it could be taken.
So they have leaned right in and they've gotten secondhand vintage avocado toilet to put
Fantastic.
back into the bathroom, and they
Mm.
found a strip of the wallpaper. So they went straight to Graphico and they got it redone in large enough scale to put it back into the bathroom. And so they're very intentional about how they've revived or revitalized this original design, and they're very retro. Like it's not for everyone, but it's
Yeah.
so kitsch and so great, and it is the perfect story of exactly what we're talking about. Thinking about what the home needs, how the home performs to the best of its capacity for what it was created for. It's like
Mm.
not trying to round peg square hole, which was exactly what I'm saying. Like these big houses out here in the Macedon Ranges going Hamptons is like that's not what it was designed for, because
Mm.
obviously Hamptons has airflow, it has a different style them differently, we think about them differently. It's like trying to make a Queenslander look like an inner city urban Melbourne apartment, like it's not
Yeah.
gonna blend like that. Speaking of all of these things that we're watching and consuming, I know I worked with you right from the very get-go in your business in terms of doing some coaching and things, and I think I was incredibly impressed in your approach to social media and marketing, specifically since, yes, you've had a transformation of career, but you haven't come out of PR and marketing where you would expect
Mm.
someone to go, yeah, I'm up for it. But you were very open to the idea of just really thinking about what would call in the greatest client for you, the one that will be doing heritage listings, renovations, focusing on sustainability. And you jumped in. Most designers I work with are very Instagram heavy. They just want to create how they consume and are not really open to a broader approach. Whereas we went in with you immediately with Substack, LinkedIn, and TikTok, which are three platforms that I feel like it's like very hard to get designers, specifically newer designers, to get involved in. You didn't follow that typical trajectory. Why not? And has it worked? Like, how's that experiment going? How are you feeling being on those platforms?
It's been a huge learning curve for me because I have tended to be like, in some ways, quite a private person, especially with my online presence. And I think it's been a fantastic exercise in myself. I think there's two things. One is I think of it as like an energetic output, as in I'm, starting a business in a new field and I'm going to show myself through this medium. And that's like an energetic output. I'm like putting it out there. I'm putting it out there. So often like that's what I'm thinking as I'm producing any form of content. And the more I do it, the more I realize what different platforms achieve. So like I think Instagram is great for just having like a bit of a portfolio and it can feel a bit more polished. TikTok, I think actually I get really good engagement on TikTok, DMs, people asking how to work with me, people asking, like requesting me to do videos of their homes, which is all a lot of fun. So TikTok feels more fun and almost like you don't have to be quite as polished up on TikTok.
No,
And
have you
then
seen some of those TikToks? It's the Wild West out there. Like, if depending on your algorithm, there's some stuff on there that polish is not the word that I would go for.
no, sometimes when I polish content too much, it doesn't track well on TikTok and it will do better on Instagram. So it's actually just there's a lot of figuring out. And as you said, I don't have a marketing background. To me, it's been like learning a different language because what you're saying is we often want to put messaging out there in the way we consume it. But actually, and this is what I use a lot of your AI tools for, is like, and I'm getting much better at prompting to ask if I'm the acquirer of my services, what do I want to hear as that person? And that's a huge mindset change to get into because I don't naturally think in that way. And so you really have to train yourself. And like when the AI prompts come back, you get to then read through them all and, okay, yes, that makes sense. So like, no, AI is not on a tangent there. And you can like obviously apply your own intelligence to it to work out how does this position and sit with me. I think that's been like for me the biggest learning curve. And now I feel it's all about coming even into a more authentic expression. And I was saying about this the other day when my mum said some of the words I used were a bit boring in my previous. And I really thought about it because I'm like, feedback from certain people is really important. Like, do not ask feedback from everyone because
No.
it's a disaster. But from some key people who you trust and are genuinely rooting for your best interest, take on the feedback. And it was interesting. The next week, I refilmed my reel and I really slowed it down and thought very carefully about what I wanted to express. And I actually had to do it mostly off camera because I have to close my eyes to imagine the space. And the traction of the video was like 2 or 3 times the previous week's one. So
Mm.
it's interesting. And I would encourage anybody who's thinking about it to rip off the Band-Aid and just do it. It's such a powerful exercise, even in just self-development. Don't worry about whether it's creating lead generation or you're becoming an influencer overnight. It's not about that. I often think about it as I'm training myself all the time in how I convey my ideas, which is so important in what we do as interior designers. And honestly, the best thing that happened was recently I was pitching a job to a client and we had our initial consultation, and it just came up in that consult, like, we really wanted to work with you because I know your whole thing is about retaining heritage and honoring it, because people have said to us, don't you just want to demolish? But I know that's your thing. And I was like, wow, my messaging's getting across. And that was a really powerful moment. It's so important to put out who you are and what you want to do, because that's what attracts the kind of clients you want. I don't want the clients who want to do the renovation for sale.
Yeah.
And none of my content suggests that I would be interested in doing that. And that's okay.
Yep, I love that, and it's exactly what it is. It's showcasing your special interests, it's showcasing your special talent, it's talking, a lot of your TikToks will start off with, "From my former career as a town planner," or blah, 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 "I've learnt this," or "I know this." That's all thought leadership and authority, but it also tells people very clearly, like, "Yep, okay, when we get in the architect or the draftsperson, this is the designer that we'd want in that team of professionals because you show up that way." And it is a long game, like, longevity is
Mm,
important. When we're talking, we're talking less than 6 months of regular content that has
yeah.
said that message, and you're already seeing traction that people are starting to pick up what you're putting down or understand that you're the real estate floor plan nerd that's gonna read through and, like, flip it around and show you what's possible and what potential looks like. And I think what that does is it opens people up for the conversation of an in-home consult, because 'cause they're like, "We would get some benefit from talking to you about what could be possible." And then it's just your sales job, right, from there to take it into pitching for the work and pitching that proposal and securing that proposal. But if you can get a lot of people that want to have those conversations about what you would possibly do with their home, it's just gonna skyrocket from there.
Yeah. And yeah, it absolutely takes time. I would say it's really been from the beginning of this year that I've fully like kind of committed to the consistency around it, which I think is super important.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just think nerd out on what you want to nerd out on. And then like I love thinking, I've always looked at realestate.com. I've always thought about how I would change the floor plans or the design. Like I've always nerded out on it. So I'm going to
Mhm.
share that because it will resonate with the right people. So whatever that is for whoever's listening to this, just share what you nerd out on. That's relevant to your niche. If you're talking about, I don't know, Dungeons and Dragons and interior design, so that might be a bit of a confusing. I don't know,
It's
maybe it's
very
not.
niche. I'd love to see that interior. Let me challenge you on that just quickly, because a lot of the private coaching conversations that we had right in the very beginning when this idea started to take form, there was a bit of hesitation on your side around how that would reflect on your professionalism, and whether, like, showing up on a platform like TikTok, saying what you really think about people who paint it all white, or like starting to have those stronger, more polarizing opinions might not work in your favor. Have you changed the way you think about that now that you're kind of in the middle of doing it?
Mm. Yeah, I think the more clearly you can express what it is that you believe, the more that your content will resonate with the actual type of client that you want.
Mhm.
So it's not a volume game, because you don't need an interior design to have 1,000 clients a year, at least not in my business model.
I haven't met
Um,
anyone that does, don't worry.
it's, yeah, and it's not about being a shock jock or like intentionally. I don't like rage baiters.
Mhm.
Um,
But it
but it's
doesn't
just
come
about
across like that though. You'd very
no,
like, there's nothing in there where you're basically saying you get in the bin if you think this. It's more like, this
no,
is the potential. This is what, as
yes,
a professional designer, I would apply to this floor plan, and you go do what you want. But if it's buy this house and you need help to do what I said, come hire me.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I think being clear on it, sharing your opinion in a way that's authentic to you can only be a good thing. I think I did, as you say, have some concerns around brand alignment with doing some of that. And I've just realized, firstly, you can make it on brand. It's all
Yep.
about how you message it and how you present it. And I feel like it's all just about giving things a try. Give it a shot. I've given it a shot. I'm seeing that there is positive return on it, whether that's lead generation or just people are starting to get the message. That's really important. And if you try and look at like, oh, what's this, Vogue Living 50 studio doing? Or what's this, whatever person doing? It's like, but that's their journey. That's what was right for them, or that's where they're at in their career. And you just have to do what feels right for you. And this came from like a genuine idea that I had.
Hmm.
And I wasn't trying to mimic anybody else or do anything that didn't feel right to me. I was a bit scared of it, perhaps. But
Hmm.
I think you've got to push up on things that make you feel a bit scared, because that's when you're kind of growing.
Yeah, I love it. And it shows that you haven't held on to any of that corporate propaganda that is like you have to show up and be in the full suit and you have to be this or that, because we can have a healthy balance. We're working on people's homes, we're working with them for a long time. It's okay to like relax the professionalism a little bit within range. Like we don't want you rocking up with a six pack at 10 a.m. of beer and like you obviously keep to running a professional business, but there I think we take ourselves too seriously in this industry, and where we can lighten up and connect with the things about it that we love, things like this conversation, it's so much nicer to hear two people chat about things than I could have written this as a LinkedIn that was very stuffy about what you should and shouldn't do from the perspective
Yeah.
of two designers. And we could have come in and been the most professionally like shown up people that ever existed, but it wouldn't be nearly as beneficial as just being the people that we are and having the conversations that we have. Keep at it, keep doing it on a regular basis, because I think I really loved that you have picked up what I've sort of talked about when it comes to almost reverse engineering from what the client needs and what your client's always
Mm,
showing up and interested in consuming. And I spoke about this with a group just today, talking about like no design, like no shade to anyone who's done it out there. In fact, I'd say every listener who's an interior designer has tried this one piece of content. Reasons you need to hire an interior designer, and it's a carousel full of text.
mm,
Reason 1, we do this, we do that, we do that. If you were to show up in a reel and just film it face to camera and say, "From our very first meeting, I could save you $50,000 in 50 minutes, and here's 5 ways I could. If I considered the lighting plan and made provisions for your future lifestyle, if I put this in the right position, if I calculated the materials, whether they were imported or local, and we compromised and saved X amount." Like, I'm just making this up on the fly, but if
mm,
you were to list out 5 ways and then calculate the final balance of possible savings, you can make a piece of content that clearly just said, an interior designer can save you $50,000 before you even pour the slab. That's so much more engaging to have a person say that to camera
mm,
and then to list out 5 ways that would possibly save you money. I'm gonna watch that. I'm probably gonna save it. I'd reach out to that person. But if I just saw a carousel of 5 ways and they were all just text, in a world of AI where everything's text, there really
yeah.
is a reason for us to start bringing what we talk about the story of a home. My tagline in my business is curating the story of you, and the story is so important to me. And being in people's homes, finding out what they need and reflecting humanity back through their homes is everything. But then we seem to show up a little bit detached as designers or new designers because we're worried about not getting it right or not knowing the answers or not coming across. I don't know, I don't know what you think, but I think maybe I had too many designer crushes as a new designer, like people I really looked up to and
Mm,
admired, and then I thought if I can't show up like her, I can't show up at all.
yeah. This is sort of what I was alluding to before about comparing yourself to studios or designers who are like really well ahead in the design game because they've had more time or whatever it is, or because they're in a slightly different game. And it's important to just show up as yourself, as you want to be perceived as a designer, because you can't replicating someone else. You're just never going to get traction that way,
Mm.
because no one wants a copy,
And you
and
don't have 16 people in your team. They've built a studio, they've built
yeah,
a reputation, they get to a point. What it looks like they're doing versus what they're actually doing on the day to day can be perceptually quite tricky because you think, oh, well, they've got it together and they can do this. And even myself, I get messages sometimes like, oh, how do you do that? Like, if I was to post my youngest is unwell or something, people are like, "Well, don't you have to take the whole week off?" And I'm like, "Well, got these AI assistants and I can reduce my business can run if I reduce down to 2 hours a day work in the event that my hand is forced." Now, I don't wanna work 2-hour days. I do have to work 5-hour days, but if everything goes to hell in a handbasket for a week or 2 weeks and everyone gets COVID and everything, if I can show up for 2 hours in 24, I can continue to run my business. Like I've been
Yeah.
very focused on that. But from the outside, that tricky perception, people are thinking, oh, she's, just doing that every day. It's really not. There's so much to it that I think we don't have those behind the scenes access to everybody's life. And you can make wild assumptions that make you feel like shit, to be fair. Like you're looking at all
Mm.
this stuff and you're going, well, I can't, or I'm not as good, or I'm not that. We just really need to stay in our lanes and look forward in our own
Yes.
way.
And that's what it's about, I think, in terms of marketing is finding your lane, staying in your lane. And if necessary, like I will unfollow people, design accounts. I can see it's not because I don't like what they produce, but if I feel like it's causing me to compare myself, I have to just let it go because I
Yeah.
know it's not going to help me in any way to see it. I can always go on Pinterest if I need inspiration. I don't need it marketing to me on Instagram. And the other thing I would say, just going back to your earlier point about professionalism and how we come across and what you were describing in the text carousel versus the on camera as having that kind of barrier. I know for me, I, I feel like we can sometimes hide, and I know I've done it as well, like hide behind professionalism. It's like a really safe space to be because you're less emotionally available to your audience. But it's actually the most important thing is to be emotionally available and warm toward your audience so they can feel and perceive you. And if you're overly professional and stuffy, which sometimes I think a lot of the design industry can be a bit like that, it feels really out of reach and out of touch and sometimes threatening to clients actually.
Yeah,
Because,
it's so interesting. Their
yeah,
perception can also be that they can't afford to have someone so fancy or maybe they'll judge me. Like I feel like clients
yes.
have connected with me in the past because they know I won't look at their washing basket. I'm actually there to reassess the color palette or like I feel like I've worked really hard to put into place in no matter whether it's the design side of my business or the coaching side that when you come to me, if you don't have a system or a process, there's no shame in that. I'm not going to tell anyone. We're just
Mm,
going to fix it or like if you come to me as a design client, I'm not going to judge you. And that barrier can sometimes breed that feeling of like either I couldn't afford their proposal, we're not the kind of people that could have Bradley come into our home, or like we might be embarrassed that we don't have as much knowledge around heritage renovations or what's possible at the get. We don't have the design language. That can be very
mm,
disconnecting.
yes.
Even I've even had clients who will point to materials and say, I don't know how to say that, like rattan, boucle, like they don't want to look stupid. So
Mm,
and you can see that it's making them very uncomfortable in their own home that I might not be able to communicate with this person. So I think some of that marketing can really reassure people that we're just people and people making beautiful houses. Like we're not anything specifically fancy. Like I can mispronounce
mm.
with the best of them. I do all, I have a podcast. I don't even care that half the things I say don't even make sense. Like it's fine. You just get on with it.
Yeah. And you should, I feel like for me anyway, I see my role as kind of like, the gentle leader and trusted advisor in the process of designing somebody's home. So they should feel safe to not know all the design lingo. And
Mhm.
I have to be also mindful of not alienating clients by, I don't need to prove to them that I know more than them about design because it is my profession. So that's what I know about. And they have their profession and that's what they know about. And we all have different things. It's just being, I guess, inclusive in how we talk about things so that people feel comfortable and you build that trust.
And don't worry, if you get it wrong, your mum will just message you and tell you using
That's
big
right.
words or boring words. You need to stop that. I love it. My last question for you is, do you think that designers as a industry, design as an industry, avoid conversations that professionals from other industries are more comfortable having? So when you come from an industry like law, things like pricing, talking about budgets, talking about money, talking about things, the creatives that I've worked with have often really found that challenging. Is that something that you think is out there and happening?
Yes, I think so. I think in general, creatives are uncomfortable around talking about price and don't want to put a price on their services because they love what they do and they would do it for free. And I feel like even for me coming from my law background where although surprisingly, even in law, like the way you'd agonize over a fee proposal, I think that caused me immense damage because now I really agonize over a fee proposal.
It's
But
universal.
it is universal. What I say is it is universally accepted in law that it's expensive, right?
Mm.
It's known, it's an expensive service. Interior design, I think some people really find it hard to pinpoint the value. You don't want them as your clients anyway, that's fine. But there is like a slight distortion in how it can be viewed. But it is a professional service and so much goes into it. And we shouldn't be ashamed of charging appropriately. It's not a hobby. I have to charge what I charge because I'm running a business and I need to be able to afford all of my expenses. Plus, I deserve to have a holiday in the year and all the other things that any other professional or any person deserves. So I think it is a bit of a problem. And I don't think we should feel ashamed. I got a quote back actually from a creative on a project. And it was funny the language they used, which was, this is the cost for X plus our time and labor. And it's something about that stuck with me because I'm like, you could just say, look, and our cost will be this much because it's more than just your time and labor. It's your value.
Mhm.
And that's what you're charging for, your expertise and your skill, not just the amount of hours that it
All the
takes
hours
you.
leading up to it in education, all the
Yeah.
non-billable time, the fact that your home now becomes my entire personality for 9 months. I'm dressing in your color palette. I
Yeah.
wake up at 4 in the morning drenched in sweat thinking about whether or not the lead time is gonna affect anything and, the logistics of the project. I think we just don't. Yeah, and it's interesting that you say what you said earlier about just not knowing how to articulate that value or even not articulate, calculate. I'd say the
Mm,
nuanced kind of approach, the nuanced, what do I want to say? Like, because there are nuances in design, there are no two rooms are the same. No, it's not a checklist of inclusions and then that's the
mm,
package price. It can take a very certain skill and a lot of personal development and a lot of focus to get yourself to a place where you're like, each time it comes in, I can accurately assess this based on past projects, like time tracking. These are the conversations and the capabilities I see with designers I work with that are 3 to 5 years into their business versus the first 3. I think it's such a learning curve and it's not a science, it's an art. Even the
mm,
pricing is an art form. So there's lots of areas of personal development I feel come into that, whether it's confidence, whether it's not just someone telling you how to do good pricing or how to pull together a proposal. It can be working on your ability to not justify and apologize for the proposal, but to celebrate that they're engaging a professional in that and that they're going to get a professional outcome unlike anyone else has ever had before. It's a brand new design. We're engaging in a whole new story in the house and we're doing it together. And I feel like I see so many emails that start with, sorry, sorry, it's taken me a week to get you this proposal. What about thank you for allowing me the time to properly consider for project la
yeah.
la la. I've had so much fun even pulling the proposal together. I can only imagine the fun we're going to have on site. See, it's all easy yeses, lots of confidence, lots of positivity. And yeah, I just wish that we would drop that sort of justification and quick
Mm.
defensiveness around the proposals. It's not to say that we're like, "Yeah, triple it, send it off. If they pay it, they're mad and you're rich." Like, it's not silly and it's not taking advantage, but so many of us are just not acutely aware of the value and the difference between what a potential homeowner can, like you say, they've got their skill, they're gonna charge you for their skill. If they're a mechanic and your car goes and you're in a relationship with them building a house and you take it down to their shop, they're not gonna wipe off 5, they're just gonna charge you what it costs to do the
Yeah.
job. And, yeah, I do think that we're so busy trying to apologize for the skill that we have, we've rarely remember to almost checklist that skill and think about that. I can visualize, you said before, I have to be off camera sometimes and close my eyes so that I can see, like, walls coming down and rooms opening
Mm.
up and spaces being flipped, and that is an epic talent that we should be charging for because they could close their eyes and click their heels together as many times as they want. They ain't going home. Like, nothing's gonna happen.
No. And that is, yeah, it's so true. And I think it unfortunately comes from, I mean, this is like even a more broad philosophical discussion around how our society in general doesn't place huge value or enough value in creativity, even though as we venture further and further down this path of artificial intelligence, the very thing which I think is going to keep our species well and good is our creativity. It's the
Mhm.
way that we feel, and all things that are creative working with our feelings.
Yeah.
And that is hugely valuable.
And as you say, it's
And
only becoming more so that
yeah,
human connection, art, creativity, creation we haven't seen before, things that are not like large language models being just pattern recognition. Creativity is not pattern, it's not anticipating the next step in the
yes.
pattern, it's designing the pattern from, like
Mm.
that's never been seen before. So there's a real sense of celebration. I know people can feel doom scrolling. You can go into like a Friday night TikTok hole of like the world is crazy.
TikTok will do that. Jeez.
Yes.
Watch my
How have you
videos
found that with
instead.
consuming? Like, are you getting distracted by that? Or are you trying to show up and sort of just engage with what's happening are you being careful with your TikTok consumption?
I'm trying to be careful with it. What happens is I end up scrolling and somehow like my phone is like this close to my head. And at that point, I just like throw my phone away. I'm like, okay, this is, it's like a bad drug.
Yeah.
And I guess at the moment, I'm very singularly focused on my work that I'm like, this
Mhm.
is such a distraction.
Yeah.
Like even dating apps I had to delete this morning because I'm like, this is just like draining me. Like, what do I need this for? This is distracting me from stuff that's genuinely exciting and fun in my life.
Yeah. Oh, I
And
love that.
TikTok kind of the same.
I would challenge that and argue as well that for all the designers listening that think that they're not doing the same in Instagram, bullshit. You are on Instagram, you're not learning anything. You're looking at other
Hmm.
people's design work. That's not making you a stronger designer. Exactly what you said before. In fact, it dilutes your creativity
Yeah.
because you start seeing more and more things. And then you start doubting yourself when you're pulling a concept together and everything was fine, but you're like, I swear I saw something like that 2 weeks ago. So I don't want her to think I'm copying you in your own head. You're so much better to live by structured notification reply times and not get on there all the time and see what's happening. Trending audio will not save your marketing strategy. That is not a marketing strategy. And it comes back to what you did, thinking about Substack. We leaned into a strength. You're an excellent writer. Your
Mm,
Substacks are very interesting. And then we also thought about your past professional career and how LinkedIn could support you in
mm,
sharing that Substack. So
yeah.
it was a considered strategy. It wasn't just like, hey, do you want to pick 3 platforms that are not the same as other designers? It was like, no, where are your strengths and what are you prepared to show up and do for this business? Like go on camera, talk to camera. 'Cause it's not comfortable. It's not, you're not born to be in front of that. It feels, and we're from a generation, it feels narcissistic. You were not taught that it's normal to,
Mm.
like, selfies didn't exist. It wasn't a thing. And so I think you've done so well. I cannot wait to see how it goes. We're only in February and you're seeing traction from consistency. I cannot wait to see what it looks like around September at the end of the year to really, I have every faith that that's going to be bringing in like a constant drip tap of leads and conversations that stay in your wheelhouse and continue to show off your speciality. So thank you.
Thanks, Rhiannon.
Thanks
Can't
for
wait to see how
joining.
it evolves as well.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. All right. Well, I will chat to you over on Voxer any old time because I love to catch up. And for everyone else listening, you can find Bradley's details in the show notes. I will share all of those links. You go watch all the TikToks and see if you agree or disagree with what we do with the floor plans.
Thanks,
Beautiful.
Rhiannon.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye.
I told you we were going to go there. I hope you enjoyed that as we got into more and more topics. I swear, if I didn't have an appointment after this, we would have gone on and on and on. But for the sake of whatever you've got planned to do for the rest of today, whenever you're listening to this, I thought we keep it around the hour mark would be just a little bit more palatable. Thanks for coming along and listening to our chat. If you're interested in any private coaching like Bradley and I have done before, if you want to look into Studio CEO, which is a small group of 5 founders where we go through week by week and look at personal development and coaching, I have lots of ways to work with me this year. And many of you listening, that's on the cards for you this year. It's something that you might want to look at doing specifically, I think, for implementing some of those AI tools, looking at the marketing strategies like the one that we explored in this episode and really thinking about development in the direction you want to go in specific to your studio. So not just what everyone's doing, all the free podcasts in the world. Like I love to get no gatekeeping. I try to give as much as possible, but it can't be targeted because I have no idea who's listening and what you need from me. So that's where coaching comes into play, where I actually am able to hold up a mirror to what it is you need, find out more about your goals and intentions, and then help get you on your way there. That's it for this week. I will see you next Thursday with the podcast, or Tuesday if you're over on YouTube. Bye for now.